For the past year or so, I've been working on a TV show made entirely in Minecraft. Against my better judgment, though, I also decided to make the entire soundtrack by myself, build nearly the entire set on my own, learn a brand new mod without any tutorials whatsoever, so I didn't need body actors, and man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty sure it almost ruined my life. Hi, I'm Burssty. I'm a Minecraft YouTuber, and I've been working for nearly half my life on videos just like this one. I also work for other YouTubers as a thumbnail designer, so if you like watching Minecraft videos, I'm pretty sure you've seen some of my work before. Today, though, we're gonna be talking about a very personal story. The story of the past year of my life, and we're gonna be starting with the backstory. All right, so we're going back in time to late 2024, where I was a year younger, slightly more naive, and in a pretty good situation when it came to my channel. I had uploaded 2 different videos, which had taken months for me to produce, and they ended up performing incredibly well. For some reason, though, it felt like it left an empty space in my heart. Despite the views and success I was getting, for some reason it felt like an absolute slog putting the content out. I was making what the audience wanted and not necessarily what I wanted. Problem was, though, I had absolutely no idea what I actually wanted to create in the first place. That all changed when I ran into a Minecraft show by Ivory Cello called White Pine. Now, if you don't know what White Pine is, I've talked about this ad nauseum in a previous video, so I won't go too deep into what it's all about, but what you need to know is that it's a scripted Minecraft series. It's basically a murder mystery starring one of my favorite YouTubers who ended up casting herself as the main character of the series and got some of her friends to play the other characters. It's a slow burn, but it's a super unique watch, and I'm not caught up on the past like 3 or 5 episodes because I've been super busy, but regardless, after I watched episode 1, it ended up flipping some sort of switch in my mind. The usage of creative shots, the aspect ratio being so unique, the storytelling, the character development, it reawakened this spark, this fire that was burning in me this whole time. It was a passion that had been in me since I first started making Minecraft videos back in like 2013. I was like 10 when I edited my first video in Camtasia Studio, and it's the only thing I've ever truly known. But that being said, it's very clear that I've always had this innate desire to tell a really cool story. It's pretty much a flaw at this point because it's constantly kneecapped my ability to put out content and videos. I've been given flack by so many creators for just making something that serves myself more than it would serve a potential general audience viewer. I've especially gotten a ton of criticism from a lot of people in the SMP community who at that point had led super successful YouTube channels and careers. I wasn't doing videos correctly in their eyes. Their main criticism was that I'm not telling a compelling story through my content. I let that get into my head for a while. I started to be super conformist. I started making videos that would excite a general audience. I mean, that Wreck Rap Melon video, the one with Jet Starfish's mod, those were ones that I knew would appeal to other people, not necessarily me. I tried to make my personality more exuberant and audience friendly. I did everything I could to just be watchable. That led me to a pretty dark place, both mentally and emotionally. I realized at that point my path, my story, it wasn't in SMP videos or gameplay. I ended up changing my entire worldview, and I started thinking about getting a real job instead of pursuing the pipe dream of being the next big Minecraft creator. I started doom scrolling Indeed for hours, hoping for like a new listing to show up or a job I could apply to in like the media field. I applied to a huge tech channel that's not too far away from me. I bet you probably know who they are, and I even got to trial for them as a thumbnail designer for a single day. It was super fun, and they were really impressed with my work, but they ended up not picking me at the end of the day. I got that email about May 20th on my birthday at midnight when I was visiting my girlfriend, and man, that was a great birthday present. But regardless, I kept going, and I kept forcing my YouTube channel more and more to the sidelines as I tried to pursue a job. For a little while, it felt really freeing. My channel started to feel like this fun side project, a way to just pass the time and flex my creative muscle, metaphorically, instead of taking over my entire life and setting the expectations for my next upload so high that I would fall into ADHD decision paralysis again and not upload anything for literally months. It was around that time that I told myself, okay, you know what? Let's just do something cool. I'll have fun doing it and I won't overthink it too much. Simple, right? Not really. The more I worked on this idea that I had in mind, the more ideas that I came up with in its stead, and the more of those I wrote out into an empty Google Doc. The bigger in scope and effort the entire thing became. Before I knew it, it wasn't just a proof of concept anymore. I had written a series that would end up becoming my obsession for the next year of my life. I started writing things into the series that I didn't even know were possible for me to make in Minecraft at that point. I came up with this idea of a TV that springs to life and shows a news broadcast on the screen, a handheld handheld voice recorder that is transmitting a message from a long-lost society, a city of glowing neon lights, a bunch of other stuff that would definitely spoil the plot of future episodes. Needless to say, I was going insane writing that script. I was spending multiple hours every single day, even when I just flew out to visit my girlfriend for a few weeks, writing down ideas for my series. And eventually, I ended up having a finished outline for the first season of Despotism, a cohesive, flushed-out Minecraft story built on cyberpunk and dystopian themes that finally had everything I knew it needed to be a proper, like, Dan Harmon story circle hero's journey type thing. It had, like, twists, turns, and what I'm hoping ends up being a pretty insane twist ending, hopefully, fingers crossed. So all I had to do then was build it. Easier said than done, because I needed this world that I created to become real, tangible, and interactive. I needed a set. Not like those sets that you see in the malls where they're doing, like, the Hallmark Mall Santa movie. No, like a real film set in Minecraft. If you've never built anything at this scale in Minecraft before, you're gonna spend most of that time figuring out how to even place blocks in the first place at the scale that you're needing to place them in, and that ended up being really, really time consuming. I started the project around the beginning of the year. I started with this flat desert world where I used Axiom, a mod that I started learning, to start terraforming these huge sections of land into mountains and hills and cliff faces, forming the area that was now referred to as the Crystal State Slums, which is the area that the character lives in the first episode. And I built a floor plan, then I started out blocking out buildings with literal colored wool, filling them in by replacing them with other types of blocks, then adding details in between the houses just to make it look more organic, like little plants and like putting a statue in the middle of the town square, and then putting like paintings on the walls, and then like adding texture to everything. It's kind of crazy how in-depth you can get. It's almost like a fractal with how detailed you can get. Alongside that, I started creating buildings for the capital city, making these tweaks upon tweaks upon tweaks, iterating and changing designs, and I ended up modifying a shader pack called Insanity Shaders to make the neon lights actually emit colored light onto the surroundings. Look at this screenshot from when I started making the skyscrapers. At this point, I was absolutely flabbergasted at what was possible with this, and I ended up building everything from then on with the shaders on so I could see in real time how the light casts onto its surroundings. I also dropped $800 on an RTX 5070, but don't worry about it. One thing led to another though, and I finally had a film set for the first episode of my show. I got some of my friends together to help me voice act. I even got a YouTuber from the Lifesteal SMP to cameo as the guy who steals my record player, and things were looking up for me at that point. Time skipped forward a little bit, and after episode 1 was complete, I ended up making an entirely new map and a new world to build a hidden laboratory in the mountains set of millennia in the past. Every single building, every hallway, every speck of dust on the ground had to be exactly how I imagined it at this point. Luckily, with my experience making the first map, it took me considerably less time to block out the foundations of what would end up being the laboratory you're gonna see in episode 2, which I'm super proud of, by the way. It took over every synapse in my brain. I spared no expense. I pulled every stop, and I made what is probably the most average thing that has ever hit the Minecraft building scene. It's pretty mediocre, but if I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm not a professional builder. I could have just saved my time by focusing harder on applying to jobs so I could make enough money on minimum wage to hire a builder to create everything for me from sketches that I gave them. By the way, I don't really draw all that well. And then episode 2 would have already been out at this point, but who likes doing it the easy way? I wanted it to be built by my own hands. No matter how mediocre it ended up being and how long it took to put it together, ultimately, I just want it to be mine. I've come to peace with that. I want what I make to be uniquely mine, even if it's not as perfect as what it could be with the help of someone more seasoned than me. I want to gain all the skills I need to flesh out this world on my own so I can better share my vision with you guys. But the issue is, it's just ridiculously time consuming. If you haven't noticed, my last real upload was in February, not including the trailer. Depending on when I put this video out, that's been at least 8 months since the first episode, and that sort of inactivity terrifies me. As someone who has had that concept of consistency like drilled into me by people who have leveraged that consistency to turn their channels into full-time careers, but that wasn't the only thing I've been working on. This brings me to the music. The music is honestly the only reason I've had the motivation to make Despotism in the first place. I've been producing music on an amateur level for a few years at this point. I started out with a program called Caustic, which is like a mobile app on Android, and after a year or so, I eventually moved to FL Studio. It's the program most music producers know and love. It's the industry standard besides like Ableton or whatnot. Over those years fooling around with the software though, I'd gone from making pretty songs that sound really muddy in hindsight to working on something I can genuinely say I'm proud of. In that time though, I've also come up with ways to use my knowledge in music production to my own advantage. I've snuck in my own songs to some of my earlier videos without telling anyone. I've made some parody songs on my second channel, like ones related to parkour civilization, or Clown Pierce, or stuff like that, but that wasn't nearly enough. I wanted to actually use my production skills to create something big. That ended up being the soundtrack for the series. Honestly, at first, I thought I'd still use some Epidemic soundtracks or ask someone to help me out with making parts of the soundtrack. I actually have a few music producer friends that would be more than willing to help me out. But for some reason, I just needed to do the whole thing, the whole soundtrack, all by myself. Not just a few background tracks. No, every single piece of music in the series, every single song in every single episode will have been produced by me. When I started making music to make it feel authentic and separate it from my content, I'd made up an alter ego, a persona, if you will, to release the music under called Shit Malfunction. So with that in mind, I started making songs that fit the vibe of what I wanted to make. Songs that had like a common theme, common instruments, a similar tempo, and I just let myself run wild with ideas. And that ended up becoming the first volume of the Despotism soundtrack. I released it on SoundCloud and like Spotify and whatever. But there's something I want to talk a little bit more about in detail. It's called the leitmotif. You've probably heard this term before if you have played Undertale or Deltarune and have interacted with that community. A leitmotif is essentially a song that has a series of notes played in succession that has been used in another song. So basically a series of notes is used across multiple songs, or you could just call it a motif. In this case, the leitmotif I created was the Despotism theme. Here it is right now. You hear that, right? That is essentially something that's going to be used throughout the entire soundtrack. Not every single song, but ones that I feel are pertinent to the main theme of the story. And you can actually hear this across multiple tracks that I've created. You can hear it in this one, this one, and even this one. And each one evokes a different emotion, whether it be suspicion, an intense situation, melancholy, fear, love, or what have you. This is the first time I've ever done something like this, and honestly, I have no knowledge of music theory whatsoever, so it took me a little bit to figure out how each track would sound and how each one would be used within the context of the show. But once I nailed that down, I ended up in this flow state, and I created dozens of songs that I could use across the entire span of the series. I was super happy with what I'd created, obviously, and of course, if you want to listen to it, I can just put all the relevant links in the description, but regardless, I started to seriously get invested into the entire process of creating the series from the ground up. Again, I knew I was only one person and that this would end up making it prohibitively time consuming to make these episodes, but I thought just maybe I could quit geeking, lock the F in, and make this entire thing in just a few months. The longer I worked on each individual part of the show, the more I realized I couldn't do this alone. So I decided to form a small army. Made a server and I added all the voice actors, got a couple skin artists to help me make the skins for the characters. I got a couple friends to help me out with building every so often, just learning new techniques, and I'm still a couple months out from having the second episode done. I'm hoping I have it done by the end of the year at least, but I'm still waiting on some voice lines, and I still have a bit of the lab to build out and prepare for a few of the key scenes that I haven't been able to film yet. So that's where I am, and my life has never been more stressful. It's nothing to do with the series, but more so my lack of ability to nail down a job alongside the project and my lack of funding for the series as a whole. I don't know what to say. It's been really cool working on this, and I definitely don't want to quit. But don't get me wrong, I also have to know when to ask for help, and I think that time is now. So I wanted to come clean, just rip the band-aid off, do a face reveal nonchalantly, and hopefully see if someone out there wants to help me turn this show into a reality by ideally keeping me afloat while I'm working on it so I have more time to invest into it. Listen, I know this YouTube thing is a privilege. A lot of people can't make YouTube videos and have the equipment that I have, and by putting out this content, I'm actively balancing this with any chance of having a financially stable future. But if you've known me for any period of time, you also know that I'm insanely stubborn, and I will see something something through, even if it kills me. So if you believe in the mission and you believe in what I have going on here, I have a couple ways you could support me. Firstly, just watch the first episode. It's really cool. I'm super proud of it, and it has over 10,000 views right now, which is awesome. But if you could spread the word, send it to your friends, make some fan cams of the characters, contribute to the wiki in some way, it would mean the world to me. But also, if you want to support me financially, I have a Ko-fi for one-time donations in the description, but I also have a Patreon if you want to get some additional content. I've been toying around with the BBS mod and learning these new editing techniques I've been itching to share with people, so I'll be uploading a couple videos talking about the methods I've used in the show, as well as cool tips and tricks. I already have a couple videos up on there already that are paywalled right now, so if you want to see more, definitely check that out and please subscribe to it. It helps me out a ton, and the regular income will compound over time. Other than that, I just wanted to thank you all for being as patient as you have been. YouTube is nowhere near as hard as a real job, regardless of how much effort I try and put into it. You don't have to clock in every day. You don't have to get up early in the morning. You can make whatever you want whenever you want. And for that, I am super duper grateful to be a part of this space. So yeah, anyway, video over. I'm leaving. Bye.